Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Welcome to the Hockey Leads here at latenightsportsradio.com. With Bob Sullivan and Alex P. Smith. Alex, how you doing tonight?
Not really one of the best of nights overall, as far as sports goes, at least in my world right now. We're going to have a Game 7 of the World Series tomorrow night. Hockey's been really brutal from a betting standpoint on my end so far in this first month of October. Now we're into November. Had a bad beat tonight in overtime. But we got some big football now. We got the college football playoff rankings. The first edition of those rankings came out tonight with a ridiculous. We've already got some controversy coming up. I believe with Texas A&M hopping over undefeated Washington. The move I definitely don't agree with. So we're going to see a lot of juggling around, obviously, between now and the end of the college football season. But definitely got some big NFL and college football games coming up this week.
Okay, granted, this is year 3 of the college football. Year 3 of the college football playoff. Yeah. Looking at, I think what was it 2 years ago? We had like Ole Miss, Alabama, and Mississippi State all in the top 4, like in the first one, and then it wound up being just Alabama. Everybody overreacts to the first one, obviously.
Yeah.
It'll all work itself out. With Texas A&M being in that 4 spot, how do you think? You got one team that's pissed off, and in Washington, and there's no reason to be, it's the first poll, so prove yourself after that. Would you say that Washington or Texas A&M is due for a loss, or which one would be more due to bet against this week or next?
It's interesting because I was looking at the Washington Cal line. Washington opened as a 15.5 point favorite, got quickly bet up to 17. And looking at Washington's schedule, I was thinking, okay, if there's I don't believe Washington is going to go undefeated. I thought they should have. I was on Utah last week, covered at plus 10.5, and I thought Utah should have won that game outright. They made some mistakes and kind of shot themselves in the foot. But looking at this week, I think now Washington's a bet-on team because I think they're going to, like you said, they're going to be pissed off playing a Cal team that doesn't really put up a whole lot of defense at all. So right before we got on air, I haven't played it yet, but I got it circled on my list of games because, like I said, it's just absolutely ridiculous that it's just I just don't understand why on earth, and we always talk about, okay, well, which loss is worth more, which win is worth more. So obviously, A&M's getting credit for losing to a number 1 Alabama team that obviously deserves to be number 1. There's no question about that. But how does their win against, soon to be independent New Mexico State bounce them over a tough road win for Washington to keep them undefeated? Those just last week alone, combined with the body of work, should already automatically, at least for this week alone, give Washington the head over Texas A&M. So the thing is, we have no idea what the true criteria is for the college football playoff and how these things are being done, how these moves are being made. The fact that the committee already sees A&M ahead of Washington now means that if everything stays pat all the way through, they're still going to see them ahead of Washington. Obviously, that's not going to be the case, but it just doesn't make sense. To me, it just doesn't make sense at all how A&M hopped back over as a one-loss team. I think at the beginning of the rankings, if you're undefeated, you should be toward the top. And then once we get down and whittle down to the 1 or 2 undefeateds left, if there are any, and then now we start counting how 1 loss, how 2 losses weigh against each other.
And the funny thing is I think I brought this up on the last show. If there was going to be a 1-loss team to be ahead of some undefeateds, I felt like it should be Louisville. I know they struggled with Virginia, but they've played a pretty tough schedule. They destroyed Florida State. Clemson, aside from a bad 13-minute stretch in that game, they were better than Clemson the rest of that game.
Yeah.
And, for also Clemson being number 2 is kind of a joke to me because they have played as down to their competition as anybody. And for them to be ahead of Michigan, like Michigan, I think Michigan's a tad. People like them a little more than they should, just because of Harbaugh. They're a really good team. Jabril Peppers is a great player, but I feel like that's where I stand on that.
My rankings going into before tonight. So I had this Sunday. I had Alabama 1. I had Michigan number 2. Just simply because if you look at how good of a team they are, Alabama and Michigan are the 2 most balanced teams within the top 25, if not the entire country. Absolutely dominant defense, fairly electric offense. Michigan can turn on their offense on and off when they want to. But they have talent, no doubt. Like I said, Jabril Peppers playing at literally every position he could possibly play within a game. And right now, I say him and Lamar Jackson are my co-favorites to win the Heisman as of now. But I had those as 1 and 2, and then I had Clemson 3rd. Clemson's body of work, yeah, they haven't been as impressive, but they are still an ACC team, like I said, a tough enough team, like, with Louisville, same credit. And then, of course, I have Washington number 4. I would have had Louisville and Ohio State 5 and 6. I would have Louisville ahead of Ohio State. I think Ohio State, their wins are just absolutely horrendous. That game last week against Northwestern, that's a team you're supposed to be blowing out at home, and you're only winning by 4 points. So I think if you have to make any one-loss team, within that 5-6 range, I think Louisville is 5th. And Ohio State, maybe even A&M and Ohio State could kind of be a coin flip for 6. But no way do I have any of those one-loss teams, and especially not Nebraska or Florida. I don't have any of those one-loss teams hopping all the way up into the top 4 right now.
Looking at the lines for this week, what caught your eye in college football?
Well, we already talked about the Cal-Washington game. That was one that, like I said, I was really interested in looking at possibly fading Washington. And it's still a lot of points, granted. Cal is a team that, they don't play any defense, but they play a lot of offense, and they can get the ball up and down against anybody. So you giving them 2 touchdowns and a field goal there at the spot where you might want to automatically just kind of look at taking the points. Washington might try and play a little conservative, not make too many mistakes or any turnovers. It's not that their style of game, but Washington has a target on its back the rest of the way. And a team like Cal could come in knowing this is a huge game for them, and at home, national TV game, they might be a little fired up. But like I said, Washington, I think they're going to come out a little upset with their ranking position and play well. Looking at some other lines, Georgia and Kentucky. Kentucky is the real shocker right now as far as Power 5 conference teams go. Had Georgia defeated Florida, Kentucky would actually be leading in the SEC East right now. And now Kentucky at home hosts Georgia. Georgia opened as a 3-point favorite. Little money's come in on the Wildcats now. It brought that line down to 2.5. I was all over Kentucky last week, and I really should have hammered this game a lot harder. It opened. They played in Missouri. They opened as a 4-point underdog against a Missouri team that's just an absolute free fall. Money came pouring in. This line closed at -7 for the Tigers at kickoff. They never had the lead. It was Kentucky leading wire or wire in an outright win. Now they got to play a little bit tougher competition. They've got a bit of a target on their back. This is uncharted territory for this Wildcat team to even be talked about as possibly leading the division heading into November. Usually November is when we talk about Kentucky basketball, not Kentucky football. But Georgia always has a propensity to lose some big games within the conference. They are going into what's going to be a fired-up crowd now at Commonwealth Stadium. Maybe Kentucky can kind of hang out for a little bit in the first half. I don't know if I'll play that full game. So that's a spot that caught my eye for sure. All the Big Ten lines are still ridiculously high, but we're seeing favorites just cover these games left and right. So, you look at Minnesota laying 17 and a half against Purdue. Minnesota is not a team to lay double digits with. Conversely, Purdue firing Hazel. They brought the interim in, and they got their doors blown off by Penn State. So you got to see where Purdue's mindset is. Are they just trying to pack it in and get ready for next year already? Or are they still going to try and fight and come back, off of an embarrassing loss and maybe hang around with a Minnesota team that's got a ton of injuries? not one to really run up the score on anybody. Almost lost actually outright to Rutgers at home for homecoming in their last contest. So that's a game where there's a lot of games to stay away from as far as conference play, and then there's a few non-conference games that are interesting. We'll talk about later in best bets.
One thing that caught my eye. Granted, I watch pretty much every one of their games and make fun of the team, but Nebraska Ohio State opened at 16.5 has gone up to 17, 18 in some books. Is that just temp? I mean, I feel like I want to take Nebraska to cover that because they haven't gotten blown out. Well, they've had one chance to get blown out, and that was Wisconsin. But and the way Ohio State's playing, is this setting up for Nebraska to cover, or is this setting up for just stay the hell away from it?
It's one or the other. There's no way I'm laying the points with Ohio State. We've seen Ohio State just completely, and it's odd because Urban Meyer teams are usually really good as far as covering the number, no matter how big or small the spread margin is. We haven't seen that this year. They've been failing to cover some really big numbers. So getting what should be a pissed off Nebraska team, I feel like Nebraska really had a legitimate shot to possibly win that game. Like you go into overtime on the road, and fall a bit short, but they played a much better game than even I anticipated. I knew they would cover that game last week. It just missed my card, but it was a game where I would have taken the points or passed. I passed it. Same thing this week. I'm either taking the big points with Nebraska. And this game opened some books 13.5. And so money has come in on Ohio State. Ohio State, we've been waiting for them. We've said it time and time again on this show. I've said it on other shows. We're waiting for this team to come out with that marquee, win, and not just a marquee win as far as the polls and the rankings, but a big blowout win. They don't have it yet. Not to the tune of within tough conference play or late in the year. Their resume, in my opinion, is not nearly as impressive as I said, like with other one win teams. They fall short of the Louisvilles and A&Ms in my book. So you would anticipate maybe this is the game they come out and win by 3 touchdowns, but I'm not going to risk my money with it right now. If anything, I pass this game or I'd take the points with the Huskers.
NFL wise, was there anything in the NFL, is there anything in the NFL that's really catching your eye? Dallas at Cleveland, 7.5 points. This could be Dak Prescott's last start for the Dallas Cowboys this season. I don't think it will be. I think Dak will end up keeping the job long term for the rest of the season. But do you think he played well against Philadelphia? This feels like a letdown spot. Do you feel that at all with how bad Cleveland is?
No, I don't feel that at all. One thing we've talked about this too with the Prescott and Romo situation. If Jerry Jones pulls Dak Prescott for Tony Romo at this point, the Cowboys deserve to lose every game the rest of the season.
I agree.
That's just long and short of it. I mean, you're pulling one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. You're pulling the Rookie of the Year and possibly MVP candidate for a guy who has done absolutely nothing but get hurt year after year. So the fact that we're even talking about it is ludicrous. But looking at this game, a lot of people are all over Dallas in this spot. A lot of people that I've talked to, a lot of publications I've read are looking at Dallas in the spot, and you have to look at Dallas because of how bad Cleveland is. Cleveland, it just doesn't seem like Cleveland's going to show up in any game at this point. And I don't think this is going to be the week that they pull an upset and get a win here. Granted, this is on paper, situationally, usually would be a letdown spot. Dallas winning in overtime against the rival at home in Philadelphia. But you're only laying 7.5 points. I don't see Cleveland hanging around within 2 touchdowns of this game. So if I'm playing it, I'm laying the points with Dallas. But there's no reason to play this game. There's some other good spots on the board. If anything, I would look to maybe tease this game down. That's something that I did last week. I had Philly plus 11 and a teaser tied with the Patriots at Pick'em. So 2 games I didn't even have to worry about basically. So 7.5, you get a 6-point teaser. Tease this down to a point and a half. Tie it in with another game. That might be the only way I would look at betting this Dallas Cleveland game.
Is there anything that you saw in the NFL this week that you were salivating at?
No, like I said, I kept it really, really conservative. I've been keeping it really conservative with the NFL this year, and that's probably the approach I'll take the rest of the way. I was on the Falcons. They got the win. They did not get the cover. They were laying 3 points against Green Bay. But the thing that shocked me the most, really, I think, was the Vikings losing outright to the Bears. Not so much. This was a spot that I had circled a while back. Had the Vikings won against Philadelphia and kept their undefeated streak going, I think the Bears. I would have been on the Bears to win outright in this game on Monday. That being said, the Vikings lost, and Zimmer rips into the offensive line. I'm thinking, all right, they'll have more of an inspired game. They should be able to handle the Bears, who have been money burners at home. The O-line looked even worse in this game. They made the Bears defense look somewhat respectable. So now you got to wonder what the hell's going on with the Vikings at 5-2. Do you think you shouldn't be? They're pulling the panic button, pushing the panic button, and pulling the fire alarms up here in Minnesota right now, because you look at this schedule, it gets tougher and tougher. They've got Dallas coming in at home. They're going to have to play the bulk of the NFC North again in the their second go around. What looked to be a promising, possibly 13-3, 14-2 season for the Vikings. Now we might be talking, could they fall down to 12-4, 11-5, 10-6? Heaven forbid the Packers start to heat up. The Bears are shockingly in the mix of things, and had they not blown a couple of games the previous weeks, they'd be within 500 or over 500. So I don't think there should be too much concern for the Vikings moving forward. They will still be a playoff team. They should still win this division, but they've got to fix some things on the offensive line. Alex Boone getting hurt in that game as well. That's going to be a real mess to try and patch things up now. Catching a Detroit team, not good, but they have an offense that can, be pesky at times, and their defense finds ways to shut down games late. So it's better to have these struggles now in the middle of the year than late in the year, but the Vikings might have some work to do quickly to keep their pace afloat top the NFC North.
Before we get into best bets, would it be wise to? Well, okay. Is there good money? What would be good money on an MVP? Like, what would be a good value? Would putting money on Tom Brady? Everybody wants to say, well, you should disqualify him for being, suspended for the first 4 games. But on the other hand, I think he would have more of an argument for MVP if they had gone 1-3 and then they were playing the way they are. Going 3-1, I think should affect it more than him being suspended. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't agree with the whole disqualifying him from the MVP for being suspended. If he keeps putting up the type of numbers he's putting up while missing 4 games, I think that only adds more fuel to the fact that he should be MVP. But you look at I'm looking at some of the numbers that are up, and these are from Bovada, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Tom Brady plus 150. He's the favorite. Ezekiel Elliott right behind him at 6-1. And then you've got just a mess of players that really, the only players I would look at that are in the range below would be Dak Prescott at 18-1. And maybe Matt Ryan at 12-1. And that's comes with a caveat of if Atlanta were to win the NFC South, which is a possibility, a high possibility, but I think that's the only way we see him reach that point. You got David Johnson for Arizona at plus 10-1. I think that's a terrible bet. I don't think he's anywhere close to being an MVP. Aaron Rodgers 16-1, Russell Wilson 20-1, and then Philip Rivers 25-1. I think none of those guys are even going to be close to that. I guess Carson Wentz at 66-1. There's some value there. Philly can find a way to end up coming back and winning this division. I would guess that number will close a lot lower of a price than 66-1. So if you want to look for some value now, a lottery ticket kind of play, I think Carson Wentz might be the shot to take now. And I think he'll be able to hop over a lot of these bigger names that we're used to, the Aaron Rodgers and Philip Rivers of the world, and be a little bit closer within the top 5 range of that MVP vote.
All right. Well, let's get into our best bets of the week. What is your good bet for this week?
My good bet. I'm trying to find the line right here. It's in college football. Here we go. You got Utah State heading out up to Laramie to take on Cowboys in Wyoming. Wyoming got the biggest win, arguably in school history, pulling the upset over Boise State. They had never beat or Boise State straight up before. Uh, Money's come in on Utah State now. Wyoming's laying 7 to open this line. Has moved down to 5.5. Utah State's not that good of a team. They're a team that makes a lot of mistakes, especially turning over the ball. They're not careful with the ball, but this is a big letdown spot for Wyoming. I could see where Utah State could hang around with a touchdown. I don't know if I trust them enough to go money line with this and take the outright win, but I do think the Aggies could hold pace in this game and cover against Wyoming.
My good bet is going to be Denver. Yeah, right now the point spread for Oakland, Oakland favored by a point. It's basically a pick 'em. I'm going to say Denver wins this game outright. I think, Oakland's not that good at home, which tells you usually the point spread is, given 3 points when you're at home. So, they're great on the road. If this game's on the road, I like Oakland, but I'm going to take Denver in this spot. Everybody is, for lack of a better term, creaming themselves over Oakland and Derek Carr. And I'm going to say that Denver ends up winning this game. I like Denver's defense. Simeon's not that great, but he gets the job done. And, at some point, Khalil Mack is going to have to show up for Oakland. And I don't see that happen. I don't think Denver's offense gives enough opportunities for somebody like Khalil Mack to take off, if that makes sense.
Sure, I get that.
So that we get back on the right track, I'm going to do my better bet so that you can, so we can get back on track. My better bet is I'm going to go Baltimore to cover 2.5 against Pittsburgh. Landry Jones is not that good. I don't like Pittsburgh, and this is that Roethlisberger just changes everything with this team, especially this year. Baltimore, they haven't been great. No, they haven't even been good, but I will take them in this spot minus a Landry Jones. What's your better bet?
My better bet, I'm actually going to go with a teaser, as I talked about earlier in the NFL. I'm going to tease Dallas. So this would be a two-team 6.5 point teaser. So I'll tease Dallas from 7.5 down to down to 1.5 to 1. And laying 1, and then I'll tease the New Orleans Saints. Normally, the rule with teasers is that you don't want to tease through, from a favorite to an underdog. The key of teasers is usually to bring down a favorite that you feel will win a game and bring it away from the key numbers of 3 and 7. However, you look at New Orleans; they're laying 3 with heavy juice to that side, minus 125, minus 130, a lot of offshore shops, and even in Vegas. So this will be the one time where I'll go and move the Saints line from -3, actually it's to -3.5, but I'll move it all the way down to +3.5. So I get the points there, tease that with the Cowboys, just laying a point. I think these are two teams that I'll be able to get the money there, and you're laying 120 to win 100 in that bet. So I'll tease Cowboys and Saints. It's my better bet.
My best bet for this week is Arizona to cover a 17-point spread against Washington State on the road. Yeah, I'm not huge into Arizona State or into Arizona, but I am a Mike Leach fan. But Washington State, I just, I think because of their defense, this stays relatively close. 14, 15-point spread. I'm gonna go put some money on Arizona to cover this spread, even on the road. Later game, afternoon game. I think this is going to not be the best circumstances for Washington State. It's starting to get colder, so I'm going to go in that spot. What is your best bet for the week?
My best bet, and this is probably a game that may actually make my personal card, but looking at BYU, the Cougars heading out to Cincinnati for an afternoon game. BYU's schedule has been absolutely brutal. That's the life you lead as an independent school. You gotta, if you want to be a team that can compete with the Power 5 teams of the world, you gotta schedule some bigger games, and you have to go on the road. They're going to go to Cincinnati, a Cincinnati Bearcats team that has been absolutely disappointing, team that I had circled to possibly, be one of the top teams in the AAC. Their defense is absolutely abysmal, ranked 107th in the nation in total defense, playing a BYU team that can ground and pound with the best of them. This line has come down, open 9.5. You're getting at 7.5. It might actually, I'm definitely going to play it if it hits 7 or lower. I don't really know why any money's coming in on Cincinnati. I guess the travel factor. And that shouldn't even be an issue because BYU has literally been all over the country, and it hasn't affected them too much. It's just mostly been the quality of opposition they play. So I'm going to lay the 7.5 with BYU on the road. I think they'll be able to take care of Cincinnati pretty easily, win that game by at least a couple of touchdowns.
All right. Well, on that note, people, go out and make these bets. These are stone cold.
I don't know about that. I never use the word lock, but they're definitely solid for sure.
Well, on that note, do you want to tell everybody where we can find you on Twitter, the internets, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I actually want to give a quick shout out to this is a random shout out, but my grammar school that I went to back in Chicago, the Ancona School, their flag football team, the Aviators, won their district championship. It's the first time ever. It's funny because my graduating class, 2003, was one of the first classes to actually try and put together a flag football team. They got it done a few years later. So kudos to the Ancona Aviators for winning their flag football title. But you can catch me at Twitter at AXSmithSports. I'll be either very happy or very upset tomorrow, depending on what happens with the Game 7 of the World Series. You can find my plays, individual plays, daily plays at sportsmemo.com, and you can get my weekly, monthly, and seasonal packages at axsmithsports.com. Bob, what do you got going on for the week?
I did my show earlier. I had Brian Keating and Jacob Padilla on earlier, so check that out, Bob Sullivan's show. And then possible appearance on Johnny Bobo, but more than likely I will be making my return to that show more than likely in 2 weeks. But you can find me on Twitter at Bob Sullivan Show. And that'll do it for this edition of the Box Seats here on LateNightSportsRadio.com. Check out, follow Box Seats on Twitter, like it on Facebook, and we will see you again next week. Talk some more betting and all that good stuff.